Good day! Dungeons & Dragons is one of the pillars of the fantasy genre, and like any popular franchise, numerous novels have been released for it. D&D is not one setting, however. There are numerous worlds wherein the novels and games are set. There is Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, Eberron, just to name a few. The most popular setting by far is the Forgotten Realms setting, which takes place in Faerun. And over the years, there have been a number of breakout characters created, but none more popular than Drizzt Do'Urden, the Dark Elf Ranger. Forgotten Realms is the very definition of generic fantasy. You got the elves, the dwarves, the humans, and all the various trash mobs. When today's novel, The Crystal Shard, was released, it became rather popular due to the fact that one of the main characters was a non-evil dark elf. The reality is that Drizzt is not that interesting of a character. He is the very epitome of a Marty Stew and just feels rather bland, and he did so way back in his first outing. If anything, one other character in this novel deserved way more popularity and had much more character development. The novel itself opens with a bang. A bunch of barbarians want to sack a collection of towns, known simply enough as 10 towns. They are fishing villages that harvest the knucklehead trout. This fish is valuable because its bones can be used for scrimshaw. The barbarians also want to enslave the townspeople and have them continue harvesting the trout so that they no longer have to maraud. The opening part of the novel introduces the major players. Drizzt Do'Urden, a Dark Elf Ranger and friend to all, Brunner Battlehammer, King of the Dwarves, and Regis the Halfling. Regis makes a living doing scrimshaw, and he possesses a gem of some magical power. As a halfling, he eats prodigious amounts of food, and Brunner gives him the name of Rumblebelly. After introducing the Drizzt novels to my grandfather, he began jokingly calling me Rumblebelly. In the early part of the novel, Regis is a representative for the most remote town. The towns are warned before the barbarians can attack, and a council of war is called. The towns are not at all united, and they bicker about everything, and do not wish to come to anyone's aid. Regis is more or less ignored until he uses a magical gem to hypnotize one of the other representatives into cooperating. The Battle of 10 Towns is concisely and epically written, and the towns work together to fight a common foe, and even Regis gets a kill. During the battle, Brunner spares the life of a barbarian standard-bearer for reasons unknown even to him. At the end of the battle, the townspeople go back to their bickering ways. R.A. Salvatore is a very efficient writer. This opening part of the novel could very well have been a novel in and of itself. Salvatore, on the whole, does not drag out events and moves from character to character with refreshing speed. Despite this opening battle coming and going quickly, there is a great deal of backstory given for all the players involved, so while it's complex, it does not belabor the point. The next part of the novel time skips and introduces the new villain for the story, Akar Kessel, a failed magician's apprentice that kills his mentor to try and get some promised great power from his mentor's rivals. The rivals betray Kessel and leave him for dead on a mountaintop, but before he can freeze to death, he finds a magical crystal named Crinshinabon. At least I assume that's how it's pronounced. The crystal is sapient and contains the combined life forces of several liches that created it. The crystal does not have the power to simply control Kessel, but can instead subtly influence him and make suggestions. The crystal, of course, wants to take over the world, but Kessel is a lazy, shiftless cretin that is content to just chill in his Doom Fortress. The crystal subtly influences him to try to take over something at least, and thus Kessel, like so many others, decides to try and take over 10 towns. Guess they all want a lot of fish. Painfully outdated Godzilla jokes aside, in the intervening time we learn that the barbarian that Brunner captured was named Wolfgar, and that Brunner made him pay off the damage his people did to 10 towns by having him work in the dwarven mines. While there, Brunner taught him that raping and killing is bad, okay? And if you rape and kill, you're bad. And Wolfgar takes his lessons to heart and becomes less of a barbarian and becomes more of an actual human being and not just a trash mob worth 10 XP. Drizzt is made Wolfgar's combat trainer and whips him into shape. Wolfgar decides to go back to his people to try and get them to leave their raping and killing ways. But to do this, he must first complete an epic deed that will make him worthy. He decides to track down a frost dragon and faces said frost dragon in single combat. However, Drizzt as he often does, comes in and helps him out, and Wulfgar, with Drizzt's help, slays the dragon. After this, he goes to find his people and face the current barbarian king. As you would expect, said barbarian king is slaughtered by Wulfgar, and thus the barbarians have a chance to become more than just trash mobs. Meanwhile, Kessel is gathering his forces to take down 10 towns, and the armies of 10 towns, the dwarves, the barbarians, and Drizzt, will have to come together to stem the tide. This is a very well-paced and thankfully efficiently written novel. There are only a few characters, and thus we do not get character fatigue, and I was always able to remember what one set of characters was doing at any one time. Salvatore does not waste the reader's time with pointless filler and gets to the bloody point. He also more or less does not fill the novel with endless fight scenes either, and the battles are usually brief. The power levels of the characters are usually within the realm of reality, and each encounter generally feels rather realistic. But there is a battle with some frost giants that strains credulity. Drizzt and Wulfgar take on a dozen frost giants and win. Frost giants are not trash mobs, but instead are high XP mini-bosses, and Wulfgar and Drizzt buzzsaw through them rather easily. The fight also outstays its welcome rather quickly, and was the low point of the novel. The characters overall for Crystal Shard are suitably entertaining, with Wulfgar being the one that held the most interest for me, as he actually got a legitimate arc, and the reader got to see him mature from a simple barbarian to a bloody king. Drizzt was, of course, the breakout character of the novel, and I found him to be rather dull, to be honest. He is always perfect and always able to slay the enemy, and he is always right about everything, and most of the time he just served as a means for the plot to continue. In other novels as well, I found him to be preachy and way too much of a Gary Stu, and I felt that he never really earned the popularity that he received. That being said, the novels he appears in are usually quite good, and he never actually brings them down. He just really needs a few more flaws to make him really interesting to me. Brunner is suitably entertaining. He is like a grumpy old man and is always taking the piss, but you can tell that he truly cares for his friends. Overall, Crystal Shard is another rollicking good fantasy adventure that I cannot recommend enough. And so, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good, schooled in magic, and good bookworm, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this awesome content.